Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Crossover U College Hoops Talk podcast, which you could find right here on the Crossover channel. My name is Kanaye, and I'm joined with Josh. And today we are bringing you guys our preseason conference overview for the Big 12. Should be one of the premier leagues in the sport in the 25-26 season in college basketball. A lot of big-time players, a lot of big-name freshmen coming in. It should be a really, really exciting year if you are a fan of the Big 12. But before we get into all that today regarding our conference tier list for where we see teams stacking up, our conference end of season awards that we're going to be throwing out, as well as our picks to win the Big 12. If you guys can engage with our videos in any way you can, whether it's liking, subscribing, or just telling other people about us, really goes a long way with growing what we do here on the channel. So let's get right into it with our tier list. In the first tier of the Big 12, I have Houston, BYU. I just think head to toe, their roster makeup is above the rest in the field in the Big 12. I think Houston could open up as the preseason number one in the AP poll nationally. It's really either them or Purdue. Pick your choice there. BYU should be a top 10 team. They loaded up in the transfer portal and with who they're bringing in. Of course, AJ DeBanza leading that incoming freshman class, and those two teams should be really, really good this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I do question just how much more Houston will be against other Big 12 teams, but I feel like regardless of where that is, Houston is just by far in a tier of its own and pretty well deserving of where they've been considering where they were last year and honestly the past 3 years getting that one seed.
Yeah, and getting onto our second tier, I have Texas Tech, Arizona, Iowa State, and Kansas. Texas Tech, of course, has the world of opportunity of being able to make a Final Four, bringing back potential National Player of the Year candidate JT Toppin. They should, JT Toppin should put up big numbers, give that team a good chance to go on a little bit of a run in March. Arizona's bringing in some really talented freshmen. I love the retention they have, too, between the likes of guys like Jaden Bradley, Anthony DeLorso, Toby Awaka. Iowa State, also great theme here, retention, bringing back Taman Lipsey, Joshua Jefferson, as well as Movsilovic. So they have the experience. They know what TJ Otzelberger wants. Kansas, really, Darren Peterson's the main highlight for them. He should be really, really good, depending on who you ask. The Banza Peterson, that's a big debate. Who is the best freshman in this incoming class, or Cam Booster into that fold if you want as well. But Peterson should be good nonetheless. Hopefully, Kansas kind of back on track, have a little bit of a better year than they did last season.
Yeah, I do like this middle tier. It feels very grungy with just the level of play you're going to see. And you're going to see some strong guys. Obviously, Toppin, DeLorso, Awaka, Jefferson, Lipsey, Peterson. It's a very strong set of players, but it doesn't really feel like any of these teams are able to reach that higher level team like we saw with Houston and BYU. But they also don't feel like teams I would ever question their status on when it comes to making the tournament. And I would trust them to make possibly a second or third weekend in March.
Most definitely. I could definitely see any of those teams going on a run in March. Getting onto our third tier, these are the teams we view as more so as bubbly, going to be on the cusp of being able to make the NCAA tournament, might make it, might not. Those teams being Kansas State, who me and Josh are both really, really high on going into the year. I don't like the depth that they have, but I do think their starting lineup is really talented between Landon PG Haggerty in the transfer portal, one of the top players returning to the sport, as well as Abdi Bashir Jr., who's coming over from Monmouth, lit it up there. Should bring some insane shooting to the table. Marcus Johnson, who had a really good game against Michigan State this past year, playing against high major competition. We've got to see how both those guys make the leap to playing at the Power 5 level. But I think nonetheless, Marcus Johnson brings a really unique skill set to the table down low. Could be DJ Burns-esque. I might throw that out there. Baylor, Scott Drew has really had to put together a completely new roster. I believe they only had one returnee, if that. But they are bringing in a really talented freshman, Tande Yesufu, who will be playing out on the wing for them. Just to mention that Big 12 is loaded with freshman talent this year. Forgot to mention that with Arizona. Koa Piat, Braden Burries, they both should be really good. But Oklahoma State, I like what they've done in the transfer portal. Cincinnati, losing to Jizzle James is definitely going to hurt a lot. Probably going to hurt their NCAA tournament chances and making a push for the dance. But overall, I see these teams as pretty much going to be riding the bubble for the majority of the season.
Yeah, I think there definitely is some very interesting concepts and potentials, especially for these lower half teams like that Oklahoma State, like that Baylor. I think these are guys that can definitely work their way into the tournament. I feel very confident with Kansas State. As we both mentioned in the past, we're both very high on the Wildcats. And I think Tang probably has his best team in his time there. That said, I feel like you should not be ignoring most teams in this tier list, especially if you are a fanatic that is looking to see as many Big 12 teams in the tournament as you can, because they will be fighting towards the very end. And I would love to see a team. I honestly love to see a team like Oklahoma State make it in, because they've really not had the best luck since the Cade Cunningham year, and this is probably the best roster since.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I think Oklahoma State has a great chance to be on the right side of the bubble and get into into March Madness this year. Now, in our fourth tier, last tier, teams who we think are going to miss the tourney, West Virginia is one of them. You have to feel for that Mountaineers program, losing both their head coach and their top two players from this past year, Javon Small, Tucker DeVries, along with Darren DeVries coaching there. He's now over at Indiana. TCU, Utah, UCF, Arizona State, Colorado. Those teams, we just don't see a path for them to be able to make the NCAA tournament. West Virginia, I think, has the best chance out of this group. I know Hunter Huff, really talented shooter, stepping up a level to the Power Five. School, I think he should have a solid year shooting the basketball, but again, I just don't think it's going to be enough for really any of these teams to make the NCAA tournament.
No, I 100% agree with you. There's just a little too much on edge. And I think that while there are small opportunities for like UCLA and Arizona State, it's basically the same thing as last year. They might look very cool for like 2 months, and then they're definitely going to fall off to complete irrelevance, as they almost always have in the past 3 years, which does suck to see the same teams in the bottom of the Big 12 stay in the bottom of the Big 12, but that's just kind of how you build your rosters, and they're just better teams and worse teams, and it looks like particularly those two programs have just not worked it out, which makes me question if this is Bobby Drew's last year out in the desert.
Yeah, and in terms of the projected bids that I see the Big 12 getting going to the NCAA tournament this season, I'm going to go with seven. I think the top of the conference is good. Of course, I would probably have every team in those first two tiers that we have making the tournament. I think there's the room for one, at most two of those teams that we have on the bubble being able to sneak in, but I think seven is probably a good place to have in terms of bids that the Big 12 will get.
Yeah, I'm kind of pushing it up to eight. I feel like the bubble is big this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if once again, like in Oklahoma, manages to sneak in on that very like first four style bid. But I think that the Big 12 is probably more top heavy this year than it has in previous years.
Yeah, and let's get into who we think are going to be taking home some awards at the conclusion of Big 12 play this season. My player of the year pick, JT Toppin. Really can't speak too much on. Really, there's not enough you could say about how good of a player he is. Go off for 30 on any given night, like we saw this past season at Texas Tech. He returned, is being paid handsomely to make his return to Texas Tech in that program. Definitely could have gone to the NBA draft, but decided to stay in school. Not against it. Love seeing household names return to the sport. He should be really, really good to put up big time numbers once again.
Yeah, I do question once again the limits of him in the team, but I don't think there's a way to not agree with it.
Yeah, it's hard to go against JT here. But my freshman of the year pick, I'm sure, is going to have a lot of split opinions across people who cover college basketball. I'm going with AJ DeBanson for my pick for freshman of the year of the Big 12. I know I could have gone Darren Peterson, but I'm just more of a believer that AJ DeBanson just is going to fit into the fold really well with the guys out in Provo. I think there's not as much pressure on his plate to be really, really good right away to the level that Darren Peterson has, which in turn might lead to Darren Peterson being the go-to guy for Kansas, leading to him having better scoring numbers perhaps than AJ. But I think DeBance's skill set's really, really similar to Cooper Flagg's. I'm not saying he'll be as good as Cooper Flagg, but I think he can definitely get to a level that's close. But I'm just really high on DeBanza. I think he's going to be the number one pick in the NBA draft this year, and I'm taking him for freshman of the year.
Yeah, I think the Banta hype is well worth it. He is so much better than people are letting him look at, and it's not going to really show. I think because of how good BYU is and just how much Peterson will be stealing the show out in Lawrence, it'll make it feel like it's not his award to win. But I promise you not, DeBanza deserves this award over anybody else right now. He is the best freshman in the country, in my opinion. And when push comes to shove, he will show that he is the better player, and honestly, the best player on BYU right now. And he gives that team such an overall edge that I don't think Peterson could ever do at Kansas.
Yeah, even throw DeBanza and Peterson for that matter into that National Player of the Year conversation. But in terms of my newcomer, which is basically our transfer of the year award, I'm giving it to PJ Haggerty. Again, one of the top transfers in this offseason cycle, was one of the best players in the sport last year at around 21 points per game, 4 assists at Memphis this past year for Penny Hardaway, and now he's coming over to K State playing for Jerome Tang. Jerome Tang likes his diva point guards, but I think PJ Haggerty is going to really have a good year, and I think it should lead to Kansas State being able to make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it'd be hard to not choose Haggerty in this scenario. I like him at Memphis. I like him probably a lot more with Tang over Penny Hardaway, no offense. And he's going to get the ball more than really any other transfer, and honestly, almost any other player in the Big 12.
Yeah.
He's the highest returning scorer coming back this year. I get it was the AAC, but it doesn't really matter. I think it's going to be almost a 1-to-1 return ratio, if not even more, depending on how much he needs to carry Kansas State. And he deserves every single lick of attention he can get. And I really want to see him play. He is such a skilled guy. Gives me those like great point guard vibes that you want to see in a player like him.
Yeah, I'm also super stoked to be able to see PJ Haggerty kind of get to a new destination, try to aim for some more team success than what he saw in Memphis. Granted, they did have a pretty successful year in the AAC, but like you mentioned, I view Jerome Tang in a higher light than I do Penny Hardaway as a coach. But who's your pick for coach of the year in the Big 12?
It probably will be Kevin Young. I do want to give some shade to Kelvin Sampson, but he won it last year. I'm just not really convinced it happens again. Young has just popped out of the stage and just shown himself that he is like the most amazing thing. And I love watching him coach this team. I think BYU is so much better than any other team because of how good he is with coaching. I think you've heard this before if you're a longtime listener. I love his 4 point line practice schedule. I think him getting into Banza alone is crazy enough to deserve the award on RIP, but he'll earn it and then some out at Provo.
Yeah, I mean, I always want to give Kelvin Sampson the benefit of the doubt. I mean, he was a 1 seed last year, can most definitely be a 1 seed once again this year, and win Coach of the Year in the Big 12. But I'm also going to lean towards Kevin Young. Just the job he's done program building in Provo. I mean, this is probably the most hype that's surrounded that basketball program since the Jimmer Fredette days. You land the number one freshman, depending on who you ask, in AJ DeBanza. You retain Richie Saunders for 2 straight off seasons where Richie could have left with Mark Pope to Kentucky, decided to stick it out with Kevin Young, trust him and his system. Paid off last year. Richie Saunders had a career year and could be on pace to have another one this year under Kevin Young once again, being able to retain Richie, the likes of Kiba Kita as well, getting Robert Wright in the portal and Kennard Davis. Love those additions that he's done. And just how innovative he is with kind of bringing the NBA aspect of the game, being a former assistant coach with the Phoenix Suns and bringing that to the college level. I think it's really cool to see. And I'm really excited to see the encore X's and O's that could materialize for that Cougars program this year. So I'm going to roll with Kevin Young here for my pick regarding Coach of the Year. Now let's get into our all Big 12 first team selections. I personally have PJ Haggerty, Miles Uzan, Richie Saunders, Asian Vance, and JT Toppin. I know I'm leaving Darren Peterson off. I'm just worried that there's too much on the plate of Darren Peterson at Kansas. I understand that could lead to him, since he's the go-to guy, could lead to him having really high scoring numbers. But I just don't know if I see a path for. I mean, there is a path for Peterson to be on the first team, but I just feel like the pressure might be too much. Granted, I do think Peterson will put up good numbers, and I would have him on my second team if we are doing second teams for this series on the channel. I lean towards having Richie on my list. I know other people might not, but again, I still think Richie Saunders is one of, if not the most underrated players still going to the sport. I mean, you look at Big 12 play alone last year, which is what these award selections are based off of. He shot the ball at an insane clip, nearly 45% from three, over 50% from the field. I think he's going to light it up once again this year. It's not all on him the way it was last year. Scoring wise, he's going to have other guys to fall back on, which I think is in turn going to give Richie a lot easier looks to score than he was facing this past year in the Big 12.
Yeah, and I love that you love Richie Saunders, but I believe that Peterson deserves his flowers. That's the only change I'm having, switching him out for Saunders. Peterson is just carrying Kansas. I think we've said it a million times over. He will probably average 18 to 20 points a game, and if that's not first team, I don't know what is. I get it, Kansas is not going to be anywhere as good as BYU, but Debanza is just that good of a player. Am I saying he's better than Saunders? No, not necessarily, but Peterson is just given the ball way more, and that's typically how you end up getting an award like that. And if it's not, the second team is not much worse. This is going to be a really loaded conference, like it always will be. And if just being on a team in general makes you a good player, in my mind, for the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean that's a valid take there, and there's a lot of arguments you can make for a lot of guys and being able to make this first team. And there's definitely a world where they can. You look at the Houston freshman like Chris Sinak. There's definitely a world of opportunity for him to make this first team. One of the Arizona freshmen like Koa Pete specifically, I could definitely see him making this team as well. But that's who I'm rolling with my five. And my pick to win the conference, I'm going to roll with Houston here. I trust Kelvin Sampson more than I do Kevin Young. And I just think the retention you have between guys like Uzan, Emmanuel Sharp, Joseph Tugler to anchor the paint down low. You add in all of those, that plethora of five-star, borderline five-star freshmen, and you got a really stacked team. I'm excited to see how it all fits together. Same thing goes with BYU, but I think there's a world where BYU can win the conference, but I lean towards the experience and being able to coach at a high level at the college level and Kelvin Sampson over the still very early college coaching career of Kevin Young.
I definitely agree with that one. I think Houston wins this one straight up by like 2 or 3 games at a minimum. They've just dominated the Big 12 since coming in from the American, and I just don't think the freight train ever stops. You just can't tell me that Houston is not powered by fumes after what happened last year. And while BYU looks great, they're a cute team. There is nothing cute about Houston. This team has daggers in them, and I would not be anywhere near close to this squad, especially if I'm trying to make a deep run in March. This team is lights out and should be the best defense, or one of the best defenses once again in the country. I think Houston probably gets a 1 seed, and I don't really know if any other team, if they were to win the Big 12, would get that seed. They probably could and will get the number one overall team seed. And I just feel like Houston is just the team I would support the entire way through when it comes to winning this conference.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned the amount of motivation that Houston is coming in to the season with just after how things ended the national championship game where you have a lead, kind of lose it. And then Emmanuel Sharp, who I'm going to go on record, I think he leads Houston in scoring this year. Definitely a guy who could be on the first team at the end of the season in the Big 12. Definitely could be on All-American watch. Same thing goes with Miles Uzan. He was one of the better point guards in the country in the later stretches of this past season. And Joseph Tugler, I mean, just the retention of having a big guy like that and now step up into a starting role, I think is huge. And those freshmen should be studs right away. But I think that's pretty much going to take care of everything we had on this episode for our Big 12 preseason conference overview going into the season. As always, it goes a long way if you guys engage with our videos in any way you can. And until next episode, see you all next time.